If done right, video games can make the player feel immersed into the game world that the developers created. This is achieved through well-made sound design, environments, storytelling, and NPCs. However, what happens when the player tries to break that immersion? What happens when you try to break that reality? You could end up face to face with the void. The void is a place of nothingness. It is a place where the player does not belong, and within the context of the game world, the void does not belong there either. Encountering the void in a video game can invoke feelings of uncomfortability and the fear of the unknown. However, for most people, the void in video games does not make people uncomfortable. Generally, people just have the mindset of, I am just playing a video game and I am just glitching out of the map, which is 100% valid. But even though I know that is true, it does not stop me from feeling unsettled at times when I do see the void. Maybe it's just part of my brain that sees an infinite abyss and just imagines what it would be like if I myself was trapped in an endless void of nothingness. Not all voids make me feel like this, but we will discuss a decent amount of voids that I could find within one of my favorite video game series, Halo. In the Halo series, there are many instances where you can escape the game world and enter into the void. However, with the help of the Acrophobia skull in the Master Chief Collection, it is a lot easier to do this within the campaign missions. This skull allows the player to fly anywhere they want if there is no invisible wall in the way. It honestly can be a lot of fun just flying through some of these levels, but there are some instances where it can be creepy. In Halo Combat Evolved, in the Silent Cartographer level, the player is confined onto a single island surrounded by empty ocean. Normally you aren't paying attention to what's off in the distance since as soon as you land, you're fighting the Covenant. If you walk away from the fight and look out into the sea, you notice that there are no other islands or other pieces of landmass. All you see is the halo circling around the skybox and a couple of planets. However, switching it to remastered graphics, the player is treated to a new sight of rock formations and smaller islands, along with the mountains in view while looking towards the horizon. The remastered graphics do a really good job in making you feel like you are on a tiny island surrounded by ocean on a real Halo ring. Switching back to original graphics, the immersion is still there, but just not as good as the remastered graphics. If the player decides to leave the island, they can get pretty far into the ocean. In the original graphics, it is very dark and misty. However, in remastered graphics, it is very bright and blue and very unnatural. It looks like there is no end to this blue void underneath you. This blue void though is nothing compared to what I found after this. The player does eventually hit an invisible wall, but thanks to the Acrophobia skull, they can fly over the invisible wall and go even further beyond. They can see how fake these smaller islands are as they fly straight through them. But the game still feels like a tangible place since even though you fly to the highest point of the map, if you look at the far distance you can still see the mountains. And even though you can't get to the mountains due to the invisible walls, the illusion doesn't completely falter. That is until you switch to the original graphics. In the original graphics, the mountains are replaced with this weird ocean surface texture that does not match the ocean surface texture surrounding the island. It is a very eerie feeling getting close to this weird ocean texture. It seemed like the texture was oversized, so getting close to it just made me feel significantly smaller and uncomfortable, as if this large ocean was going to swallow me into nothingness. You cannot pass where the two ocean textures meet, so luckily you can't actually go into it, but dipping under the water reveals an endless void that you can only view from a distance. In Halo 2, there are many levels that you can get out of bounds pretty easily without the use of the Acrophobia skull. One of the most well-known out of bounds is in the level Outskirts. After making a series of easy jumps at the beginning of the level, you can get out of the intended playing area and walk above the void. When you are out here, you get a good idea of how small the skybox is, since it doesn't really feel that large once you can see the whole level at once. In the level Delta Halo, you can see the same thing getting out of bounds by using a ghost and driving up this hill. Once you get onto the mountains, you can see the void. And traveling around the mountains, you will see that the void will always be surrounding you. Getting out of bounds makes you realize how small the playing area is, and that the skybox around you is just a small dome designed by someone to make you feel like you are in a real place. If you were playing the game like normal, the skybox would prove to be effective at making you think you are in a real place. However, once you see the full scope of the playing area and the skybox and the void beneath you, that illusion is broken. You can get a better view with the Acrophobia skull and fly to the top of these levels and see just how small the playing area and the skybox really are. In Halo Combat Evolved and Halo 2, with the help of the Acrophobia skull, you can break many of these levels. These games are much older and made for the original Xbox, so I'm guessing the developers weren't able to add so many invisible walls like they do in the newer Halos, so there are just so many examples of creepy voids that if I were to go through every single one in these two games, we would be here for a while. So I would suggest using the skull to get to the purple void under Truth and Reconciliation in Halo CE. In Halo 2, you should also fly to the end of the ocean in Uprising or The Great Journey because it invokes similar feelings like in Silent Cartographer. Or just go to any other levels and see what other creepy voids you can find. Using the skull on newer Halos from Halo 3 onward is pretty difficult with the invisible walls, but there are a few tricks you can do to get out of them. What I really want to talk about is Halo 3 Forge and Theater. These two modes have more unsettling instances of the void than the previous two games. Whenever you are playing Halo 3 multiplayer, you aren't really concerned about the skybox or what is outside the boundary of the map. You are just focused on playing the game, whether it be playing objective or camping on the edge of Sandtrap. However, if you decide to go into Theater mode or Forge mode, then you will be free to explore everything within that map. In Sandtrap, even without going to the edge of the map, if you go to Forge mode and just fly to the top of the map, you can't really see what's beyond the playing area. The skybox makes it seem like you are surrounded by this sandstorm, so that probably could be the reason why you can't see any further. If you try to leave the map, the explosives from the ground will kill you and the invisible walls will block you too. However, if you overload the map by throwing trip mines, the explosives will stop spawning and you are free to explore some of the edges of the map. You have to use teleporters to get through the invisible walls, and there are some hidden death barriers, but you are a little bit more free to explore without the risk of explosives. When you do get to the edge, all you see is the void. The lack of a detailed skybox makes Sandtrap feel like a floating island that exists in this endless abyss. It doesn't exist on any world or dimension that we know of. It is just a small desert fishbowl in its own fabric of reality. The map sandbox has the opposite feeling. The skybox is clearly visible, so you can see the sunset ahead in the distance, and there is a desert beyond the map itself. Thus, you feel like you exist in a real, tangible place. You will think in your head that you are in some random desert surrounded by Forerunner structures. But what can you say you are on in Sandtrap? Yes, you are on this tiny desert surrounded by these Forerunner pillars, but what is beyond the pillars? There's nothing. You can't come up with a reasonable scenario that explains where you are in Sandtrap once you see the out of bounds. Most of the other Halo 3 maps have very detailed skyboxes and out of bounds areas, so even when you try to break the game by leaving the playing area, you don't really get these unsettling feelings. Even though in Theater mode I got under the ground and saw the void in maps like Standoff and Blackout, the detail in the surrounding environment outside of the playing area still immersed me into the world that the developers were trying to portray. However, there is one map in particular that feels very creepy to escape. Guardian is a very small map in Halo 3, consisting of this Forerunner base and this dense jungle. You are surrounded by trees, and there seems to be a decently thick fog if you try to look much deeper into the jungle. There are also these winged animals that fly around that can die if you shoot them. So if you were playing a regular match, You will feel like you are fighting in a jungle on this base in the trees. You as the player can't glitch out of the map. If you try, you will die immediately. However, if you go into theater mode and leave your body as soon as you cross the death barrier, you can free roam as the camera. And once you do, you come to the realization of just how surrounded you are by the void. Guardian is entirely encased within the void from top to bottom, from left to right, with no detailed skybox. You can't free roam forever. There are invisible walls that stop you from continuing, but it does get very disorientating if you move your camera a lot, and you can lose your sense of what is above or below you. You are not actually in a jungle on Forerunner architecture. You are just a victim to the void with no escape. Halo Infinite contains a forge map called Void. Spawning in, you really have no idea where you could possibly be. You see stars below you and above you, with the sun in the distance. So are you in the atmosphere of some transparent gas planet? Because if you are in space, then I believe you shouldn't have a blue sky. It really doesn't make any sense, so you really do feel like you are in the void, like the name of the forge map. At the end of the day, we are just playing a video game. So with that in mind, these voids in games are nothing to be fearful of. It's similar to horror games where we know the monsters, the zombies, the ghosts, or the flood are just pixels on the screen. However, if a horror game does a good job in immersing you into its world, then it doesn't matter that you know that it's all fake. You will still probably get scared. When I play video games, I really try to get immersed into the game world. Horror games especially, I like to turn off the lights, put my account offline so no one can message me, and just get sucked into the atmosphere that I am playing in. The Void is a bit different, since you could argue that searching for the Void actively breaks the immersion, since now you can see the world created for you is all fake. I counter that by saying that is probably even scarier then. In Halo, if you as the Master Chief glitch out of the map and realize that everything in the game is fake and manufactured by some higher being, then it effectively makes all your efforts defeating the Flood or the Covenant pointless because everything is an illusion. But at the end of the day, that's what video games are. An illusion of another reality that we get to play in. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time.